The tools we'll need for today's project are a mallet, a stitching chisel, a knife, a pen, a needle and a thread, a cutting mat, a hammering board and a straight edge or ruler. So the first thing we do is measure across the lines across the top and the side of the first panel piece, just to make sure that they have the correct size from what we printed, make sure it's all to scale for when we want to cut it out ready to make it. Make sure that you can cut all of the pieces off at once. So what you do is take your straight edge, place it along the side of all of them and just cut all the way down it. With your cutting tool, we're just using the normal cutting knife, it's a Stanley knife in this instance. And what we do is make sure that we keep the instructions to one side, because we'll need them just to follow through along with this video a little bit later on. The next step that we need to do is to cut out all of the pattern pieces from the paper template. Again, we're just going to use our Stanley knife and a straight edge, and just be careful when cutting. Try to cut just on the outside of the printed lines, and that way you can make sure that everything's in line when you cut out the leather a little bit later on. So again, all we're going to do here is cut out all of the pattern pieces across all of the solid black lines, and cut out the little notches as well, cut round them, and on the divider you want to make sure that you cut round and it should look like a front shaped letter T. Letter T. Once you've done that, we'll be able to check to make sure that it looks correct, as we can see here, and then if you just them on top of each other to ensure that you know which way round they're going to go, make sure all the lines are correct. Make sure the pieces fit together nicely, as you can see here, and also make sure the back piece fits. The next step is to transfer the paper pattern onto the leather, and what we do here is make sure that all the pattern pieces are face down onto the back of the leather. And the leather that you can use can be something that you've bought from a leather retailer, or it can be something that you've upcycled or recovered. So it could be from an old suitcase, it could be an old sofa, the back of an old sofa, an old leather jacket. You don't actually need that much for this project. Then what we're going to do is roughly cut out the amount of leather that we require for this project. Cut around it. We're going to use our straight edge just so we can see where we are, and we're going to use a pen to mark onto the leather the pieces we're going to cut. We're not going to cut directly around the pattern pieces. What we're going to do is cut the leather out to what we require here. Yet again, a nice fresh blade on our cutting tool would be perfect for this. And what we need to make sure that we're doing when we're cutting our leather is moving the leather around so we don't get caught up or stuck on it. We'll also try to make sure that the rule or the straight edge stays over the piece that we need. So that way, if we do slip off, we're only going to slip off onto a scrap piece of leather and not cut into our project piece. As I mentioned, we'll move the leather around so we can stay in roughly the same position and we can just carry on cutting. Yet again, keeping the straight edge over the leather that we require to use. So the next thing we're going to do is cut the pattern pieces out of the leather. So we're going to lay the paper template down, face down onto the back of the leather, and draw around each piece using a pen and a straight edge. We could cut around the pattern itself, but we want to be able to remove this template for the next time we want to make this. So we'll remove the paper pattern and just cut around the place that we've marked. We always try to cut away from the body of the work that we're doing, so start on the inside and cut out to the outside whenever we can, just in case the blade carries on cutting and we don't realise that we end up cutting some of our work off. So we always try to cut away from the main body of the piece. Once all the pieces are cut out, you just check to make sure that they'll fit together nicely. So the next step is to take the paper template for the main part of the body, and what we need to do is make sure things lined up. We've got the nice bit up, so we're going to be doing the top side with the top side, the printable side of the template on top, and we're going to mark along our blue line. What we can do is use a straight edge and just the pen and just draw across it nicely, so it will leave a faint line across the leather, which is where we're going to the blue. And then on the divider part, we're going to do a similar sort of thing, but this is going to go across the stitch line, so we can see where we need to put the holes in for stitching it all together. So what we have here is some water-based leather contact adhesive. You can use any sort of glues or super glues or leather glues, leathercraft glues and things like that. I like this one because it goes on white and dries clear, so you can see where you've applied it. It also gives you a fair bit of time to manipulate your glued areas if you need to, and once you know that and you're happy that your project is held together with stitches, you can also gently pull the glue apart internally to give you a little bit more room on your pockets. So what I'm doing here is applying glue to both sides, and then what we do is we leave it to dry and go clear, tacky before we assemble it together. Once it has gone dry and tacky, once it's gone clear, so we can see pretty much where the glue is, it will darken the leather ever so slightly. We'll line it up to the marks that we transferred across from our paper template, double check it with the next piece, which should fit very nicely underneath the top piece all the way down around the corners, and then we know that the front pocket will fit. And we're going to apply some pressure, squash it down, get some glue on there, and we know that we're good to go. So the next step is to get our punching mat, and I would recommend using something other than the cutting mat that we've been using so far. And what we're going to do is take our stitching chisel and our mallet, and we're going to punch all the way through, as you can see here. And we want the holes to go all the way through, so we don't require any further tools apart from the ones that we have. And the thing you need to try and take note of is once the chisel is all the way into the leather, I'm not pulling the chisel out of the leather, I'm sliding the leather from the chisel, and then the chisel just falls out quite nicely. The other thing you want to look at is how we align the stitching chisel. So we've already put a faint line in there, and then what we do is the first prong goes into the last hole, and as long as they're lined up, it's going to be a straight line. We'll try and give ourselves one overhanging hole, so when we stitch we make sure that it is firmly attached on both sides. Once we've made sure we have an adequate amount of thread, in this instance 2 to 3 times the length is more than fine, we'll start a normal running stitch. So we'll go one hole and we will go down and then up, and just follow the same sequence in through the top, out through the bottom, and then in through the bottom and out through the top until we do the whole thing. Like I say, it's just a normal stitch in one hole, through, and then back up and through and out the other side. And we're just going to continue this until we get to the end, and then we'll tie a knot in the end of the thread and cut it short, and it's done. can, if you wish, hammer gently tap the stitching down just to make it a little bit smoother and sit a little more flushly against your leather. The next step is to apply some contact cement to the body to attach the front pocket, and we will also attach the rear pocket as well at the same time, and we can have these glued on together and they can be drying at the same time. You can do this one step and then another, but you don't really need to, as long as you get the front one on and then back one on, or vice versa. As long as they're both on at the same time, it shouldn't be an issue. You can also glue the side flaps down of your middle pocket at this point if you want to. As an additional note, if you were to finish your edges, this is a pre-finished leather, so you can't really bevel them, but you can put an edge coat onto them. You can do it at this point if you're final assembly. That's not something we necessarily look at doing on such a simple project as this, as it requires a few more tools. However, it would be at this point when you would do that. So once we have it all glued together, we'll take the back piece template and place it over our project. And what we're going to do is mark on the stitching lines, which are the dashed lines around this piece. And we're only going to do it from the back because that way we know that it'll be consistently even all the way through to the front, and we don't have to worry about it jumping or missing any of the changes of thickness on the front of the project. So we'll just stitch it from this side only. We're going to do exactly the same thing we did earlier, using the stitching chisel, making sure it goes through all layers, and we'll do this all the way around the outside, pushing the leather off of the chisel, and it'll just come straight out. We'll go from the end down, and from the other side all the way down, and then go across the bottom. We do this just to make sure if there's any inconsistencies with the spaces of the stitching chisel, that we won't end up putting a hole too far in, not far enough, or making it too big. Once we put all the holes through, we will thread our needle and just start to sew. Yet again, we're going to do a running stitch, so in one hole through and then back through the one next to it, up and down all the way there. You can go there and back to fill the gaps in between the stitching lines if you wish. You don't have to, this will hold quite adequately. And we're just going to start from the top, put a small knot in, go back one hole and then stitch all the way around until we get to the opposite end, and do the same on that side, come back to one stitch, tie knot in it, and what we'll do then is you can cut your thread, and you can also use lighter to burn the ends to singe it together. The other thing that I do like to do once I've finished my project is to take a pen and just run it round without the point sticking out, and just crack the glue from the leather. You'll feel it, and it just opens your pockets up that little bit better.